He's up in Alaska.
Mark's not gonna be here either. Oh, I'll just go down with JD.
Mark said if we need him for a quorum, that he would vote over the phone.
Do what now?
Mark said if we need him for a quorum, he will vote over there.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah. Yeah, it looks like it. Good.
Good deal.
All right, we're live on Facebook, just FYI.
We are live?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
So,
That's what you and I were.
Hey, Chris, your presentation is queued up and ready.
that's, okay, and that should be everything that I thought they give you sometimes.
Good,
Since
good.
I was almost finished of it, right?
And this is the supporting documentation behind it? Okay,
That's the council minutes, resolutions.
and that's what, okay.
Mhm.
Thank
Yes,
you so
sir.
much.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much. James, do you know if anybody else from the planning commission is going to be here?
Stephen cannot be here, so the only person we're missing is Rusty from the.
Rusty just paged me,
Yeah,
or texted me, said he would not be able to make it.
okay, then I
So-
think we're ready.
So we're good to go on that?
Yep.
All right, we've got, the only council member we're missing is Mark.
Mark.
Is that right? And Dustin is in Alaska. Talked to him this afternoon, and
Heck of an excuse.
he was trying to tell me, all the things he's doing, and then his phone cut out. So I said, well,
Meant to
but
be.
we were surprised that he was able to get out as well.
Yep.
So anyway, okay. All right. Hey, thank you, everybody, for joining us tonight. Called a special meeting for the zoning that we need to talk about. I've asked Chris to give us an overview of where we are, to bring everybody up to speed, and we've got a lot to cover. So with that, let's go ahead. Do you need to call the roll from both sides, or just indicate who is here?
I'll just put who all's down
Okay,
on my list.
and just to make sure we do have a quorum based on your decision, right?
Yes.
Okay, we can go forward. Chris, I'm gonna turn it over to you. Thank you.
Appreciate everybody coming here today. So in the past week or so, I've fielded several questions from interested parties that are looking to develop some land or commence forward with some commercial development within the city of Mayflower. And what we're running into is possible zoning conflicts. And I think we're getting caught up in some technical language, but this is the world we live in. And if I can read a document and I have questions about the interpretation of that document and how those rules and regs apply, then somebody else will. And what we're trying to do is clean this up. So we've got 3 layers of zoning within the city of Mayflower. We've got our base zoning, which is R1, R2, R3, and then we have our commercial district, C1 through 5. We have the suburban overlay district as well, which regulates the design standards and criteria in the commercial zones. Then we have the overlay district, that's the heart of Mayflower. So we have 3 layers of zoning that we have to navigate through when somebody calls and says, hey, what can I do with my piece of property? And sometimes all that stuff kind of conflicts and gets a little convoluted. And that's something that we're trying to work forward and towards to clean up. But as I'm here today, we're just talking about the heart of Mayflower. And that is the most recent addition to our city codes. And ultimately, the intent of that, from everybody I've talked to, was those design standards and all of the land uses within that document for what's the intent was for that to prevail and override and supersede any underlying city zoning.
Let me interrupt you just for a second.
Sure.
When you say that there's 3 layers, I want everybody to understand that just didn't occur in this past year. That has been accumulated, let's say, over a long period of time, correct?
Sure.
Yeah. So,
It's been a snowball effect, and this is kind of where we're at right now, which is why we're kind of going through the UDO process to see if we can clean some of this up and have one set of rules that apply to everybody. When somebody looks at their parcel or their address and they can say, all right, they can clearly determine what they can and can't do based on city code and ordinances. And right now, you've got to check 3 or 4 different places to get that information. And then you gotta weed some of that out. And it's far more complicated than it needs to be for a town of our size. That's where we're at right now. So the problems that I'm kind of identifying tonight is we've got the conflicting land uses between base zoning and the overlay zoning. And with that, the site plans don't necessarily have to come before the planning commission. So if we've got a property with the base zone of R1 for residential, but the overlay district comes on top of that and applies a commercial use, our city code only requires submitting to the planning commission for review and approval if your underlying zoning is commercial. So if you've got residential with commercial overlay, you can technically come in and build your project without any regulatory authority or oversight from the planning commission.
A commercial.
Yes. And that's a problem, because the whole point of the planning commission is to control and review and approve commercial development in the city. So that's a technical correction that I hope we can address and at least try to find a prop to tonight. We've got obsolete references to residential 4 and residential 5 zoning. That's mentioned nowhere in the code except for the site plan application process. So those zones don't exist. What's also absent is the R1 MH for mobile homes and the R3 for the mobile home parks. Those zones are not required and don't have any rules in the code right now. And they should. If it's residential, the residential rules should apply for everybody equally across the board. For whatever reason, those two zones are absent in our code. So as far as accessory uses, storage buildings, they don't have to adhere to the same rules for setbacks, property line requirements that R1 and R2 do. Zoning rules that only apply to R1, but do not apply to R2 and R3. So we've got several rules in our books that only apply to R1. So front yard fencing. In theory, we do not allow that in the city limits of Mayflower without planning commission approval. That only applies in R1. If you go down center to R2, you've got an R1 site-built home. In theory, you can put that front yard fence up because our exclusion is only in R1, not R2, R3, or any other zone. So we've got rules for the same house, just in different zones with different rules. So code conflict, I don't know, but that's up for discussion tonight. And I'm hoping we can get to the point where we can apply it. If it's a residential site-built home, we can have the same rules apply across the board regardless of the zone. So, like I said, everybody I've talked to, the intent of that Heart of Mayflower document was to control the development and the land use of all the commercial corridors in the city. And I don't think anybody here would dispute that. But our goal here tonight is to try to go through and look at some of these technical corrections that need to be made so we can ensure that the Heart of Mayflower, that planning document, wins the day until we come up with something else in the future that is a little cleaner and a little more consistent with the direction Mayflower is growing. So conflicting zoning, here's an example. Like I mentioned to a few of you, we've got a property south of Gandy in level 1. Base zoning's R1. It's in 2 overlay districts. All right, and I don't know if y'all can see on the left, the yellow squares are 1, and we got the purple and orange shade. So that property is bounded by 2 separate Heart of Mayflower zoning districts with the base zoning of R1.
Your opinion, which one of them is correct?
My opinion is, and I think the intent of the document is the Heart of Mayflower overlay should obey. We've got a technical correction that we need to ensure that that is the case.
That would be the highway zone.
Yes.
Just-
So we got to the left, and the purple is the mixed use area 2, and the orange shade is the.
We discussed, like Chris found it, and, a savvy lawyer could find it too and say, hey, the way it's written, I can just come and start pouring concrete.
And that's my concern. I'm not an educated person, so if I can look at this and see conflict, then someone that's trained to do that can certainly find something more than I can see. So.
And I did throw both zoning docs, both ordinances into an advanced research AI, and it found a lot of the stuff that Chris found too. It said, yeah, these are conflicts and you have gaps.
And that's the purpose of the meeting tonight.
Correct, to close those gaps so that somebody couldn't come in and use those gaps or exploit them for their own purposes.
Well, we're pro-business.
Yep.
I don't make any doubt about that.
Right.
But we've got to be consistent in
Yeah.
terms of throughout our entire
Absolutely. Safety standards, everything being the same, this is just a gap in that process that thankfully Chris identified and quickly developed a fix for it.
Okay.
So another example would be the Interstate Drive corridor. During that initial part of it, it's all zone C4, which is, compatible with the Interstate Drive overlay. But the eastern side of that is all zoned R1. But the entirety of that parcel and to the east of I-40 within the city limits is in the Interstate Drive overlay. So again, we've got C4 then R1 under one overlay. So we've got another conflict here. And again, it's pretty much in a lot of these places that aren't developed in the city right now. The base zonings just kind of seem to have been R1, and we put commercial overlays on top. Now we're getting to the point where we've got people looking to develop, looking to build, looking to clear land, and they want to know what they can and can't do. And we've got conflicts with the zoning that I hope we can reconcile tonight. But with the Heart of Mayflower, which is our last guiding document for planning and zoning in the city, that's the map. And those rules and regs are kind of designed to preempt and override any base zoning that the city had. And I firmly believe that, and I don't think that's in dispute. However, what that document does not do is override land use regulations. It overrides and supersedes design standards, setbacks, and regulations. It does not, and it does all that stuff explicitly. It does not do land use. And the only override that is explicitly in the code refers to Chapter 9 of our city codes, and that has to do with streets and drainage only. Which, if we're going to override the existing city code to have this prevail, we would want planning and zoning, not necessarily streets and sidewalks overridden. So that is the excerpt of the Heart of Mayflower, and those are the 3 points that are kind of what we're talking about. So the Heart of Mayflower enabling clause in the applicability, it clearly says the standards and guidelines of the Heart of Mayflower zoning district are going to apply. It doesn't say land use. Second part of that, to the extent standards are established herein conflict with Mayflower Code Chapter 9, the standards herein shall control. If that document were to say, to the extent the conflict and the provisions of the entire municipal code, I don't even think we'd be here tonight. But it's specifically honed in on Chapter 9, which only talks about streets and sidewalks and not zoning. And then the last part of that, it goes about site plan requirements. And it talks about, it defers the rules and regulations for site plan requirements back to the Mayflower City ordinances. And our Mayflower City ordinances only require you to do that if your base zoning is commercial. And again, I understand there's words in there like the intent, but we live in a world of absolutes. And if we're going to give approval to something or guide and tell somebody, hey, you can do this, because it's consistent with the intent, that's too ambiguous for me. I want something that's concrete, bona fide, and I don't want something that can be disputed in court or by anyone.
And developers see ambiguity as expensive. They see that as a potential cost. So if it's not as friendly to business as it can be.
So when it comes to the site plan requirements, this is an excerpt of our existing city code, and it tells you all the different land uses and districts that shall come before the Mayflower Planning Commission. We've got the agricultural, we've got open space, which we don't have any of that designated right now. R2, R4, and R5, which we don't have anywhere. All uses in commercial districts, industrial parks, and all conditional uses. Nowhere in there does it mention overlay zoning or overlay districts. It explicitly says that zone commercial district. So if I got a commercial property on a residential parcel, I wouldn't have to go before the planning commission. It's just kind of reiteration of what I just said. So in order to be before the planning commission, you would need to have your property zoned with an underlying city zoning of C1, 2, 3, 4, 5, as the code is currently written right now.
So if there's an underlying R1 and somebody comes in with a commercial interest, they don't accord with our current ordinances, they get to skip. Go past go, collect their $200
Theoretically and technically skip the review process.
because they're an R1 underlying with a commercial interest, which is not captured in this matrix.
A dumb question, though, it's R1, is that not prohibited commercial use anyway?
But
The overlay allows it.
Allows it. So there's a conflict that we're trying to resolve.
Yeah, the overlay comes in and says, well, you were R1, but we're going to allow commercial in this area like a mixed use. The problem is underlying in this matrix, we don't have an R1 base with a commercial use has to come to planning commission. It's silent to it, which then it's just, they don't have to do it. They could argue in court, well, your ordinance doesn't say I have to come to the planning commission, so we didn't.
Even though it's pretty much common sense, but
Right.
common sense is.
There's no such thing.
100%.
And that's why we are absolutely 100% in the world of technicalities right now.
Yeah. A lawyer would look at that and be like, we were within, we did everything your ordinance said.
But planning and zoning is a world of technicalities.
Mhm.
And if we're going to enforce this, it needs to be clear and tight that there's no wiggle room here. And if I can see wiggle room, somebody else is far better trained than I can see that.
It shouldn't be this complicated.
Correct. I agree.
With the 3 overlays, and I'll ask that question in a moment, I didn't want to interrupt your presentation.
But yeah, this was the discussion. So as far as that part of what I got to discuss, this is where I want to get to, is finding a way to ensure that the intent of the Heart of Mayflower was it would supersede any zoning and land use regulations in the city. Tighten that up to make sure that that's what our city ordinances say.
So are we keeping all 3 of the overlays?
For now, the UD,
It's the ban.
The UDO basically
Fixes all that.
replaces everything. The UDO is a lift and shift.
this is just
Yes.
It's a good Band-Aid, but we will replace it with UDO.
how far are we out?
I bet the city council can start reviewing our plans within the next 30 days. We've probably got 1, maybe 2 workshops left. And we
More
will,
than that.
you think?
Yeah, we're not even halfway through this yet.
We are, I think so. What do you think?
We've got quite a bit of more work to do. I want to at least do one town hall, bring public input in.
That's, yeah, that's right. I forgot
Before we
to do
present
that.
our products and
So
efforts.
it's all going through, I think I've been through that book 4 times, most of the weeds are in the front end of that book.
Yeah, that's where, that's
Been
where,
Through that part, I guess.
yeah, we started at the
Yeah.
front. Yeah, we started on page 1 and started,
But if we move with purpose, then yes, we can move forward with a sense of urgency. We can do this.
Yep.
Do it
We
smart.
need to set some dates.
Yeah, we'll have at least one town hall. That was Chris's idea. It was a good idea. Then the council, of course, will have to review it, make any, I'm sure the council will have some question. It'll go back for a revision or something, some idea of something that we missed. So that it'll go back and forth a couple times, but we're pretty close now to being complete. We're closer to being complete with the UDO than we have since I've lived in this town.
Is that, whenever it comes to council, is that going to include proposed zoning itself?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, we're marking the document as we go.
You know, I know it's general rules, but if
Yeah.
proposed map, you know, with that.
Yes.
that's what it's gonna be.
And that's
Yeah.
what we're wanting to,
Yeah.
that should be the final product.
Yeah.
That we have, we can look at that document. Go ahead and explain.
The intent is to gather the planning commission comments, everybody that's a stakeholder in this, and through our workshop meetings to bring all this information in, have a town hall, gather the public input comments, apply that where it's feasible and applicable, and send all that back to the metro plan, have a polished draft product
They'll build us a
Read it.
GIS map, the whole.
And then present that to city council for approval, and then we'll go through another revision process there. And then we will pass that, it'll go 3, 4 reads, this is no emergency, I mean, this is gonna take time. And it needs to take time, because this is long-term ramifications of the growth of the city.
And we recognize that this is going, the UDO is going to take some time to get finalized.
Absolutely.
From where
Yes.
we are today to it's finalized.
We are
And
moving with a
approved.
sense of urgency, but that doesn't mean this is 30, 50 days out. Well, my guess is, in effect, next year.
Yeah.
But you guys should start,
Go through a full 3 reading.
Yes.
Yes.
100%.
yeah, the council should start getting content here before too long to review.
But my question is, what do you recommend based on this presentation that you've gone through, very complicated, and so that we can basically get to a point where we can operate consistently and fairly until we get this?
Well, if I may, I got a few more points to hit, and I'll get to my solution for all
Okay,
that mess at the end of it.
I'm sorry.
So this is another sticking point while I got your attention for zoning. As I mentioned briefly, at R1, you can't have a fence in the front yard. Was that intentional or was that an oversight? If I've got a site-built home in an R2 or in an MH zone, I can put a fence in my front yard, but R1 cannot. But I don't know if that was the intent of the council to do that at the time this was passed, but that restriction only applies to R1.
Do you know off the top of your head if there's a difference between R1 and R2 that would allow a fence? I mean, typically the fence, it blocks, you can't see down the
I mean,
road, so I
we're
wondered.
still talking a home with a driveway, we're talking multifamily homes.
Yeah.
And no, so the question that's come before me, even when I'm doing code enforcement, going through, I have to make sure exactly where I am. Am I in an R2? Am I in an NH? Even if I'm in front of a site-built home, I have to go back and make sure I'm looking at what codes actually apply to this property, even though a home is a home is a home. That I don't know.
Seems like that should be consistent across all the residentials then.
Because if we're regulating fences in the front yard for safety reasons, how does that, just because it's in an R1, how does it
Right.
change if it's down center in an R2? Or on Pine Tree Loop, or anywhere else that's in an R1 NH, Paradise Circle? You can have fences all up and down Paradise Circle.
But again, it goes back to consistency of how we're going to operate from a city standpoint.
Yes. So that's something that is in the solution I provided tonight, is just one strike, and it's just saying that any residential use shall come before the planning commission if you intend to put a fence in the front yard. Just evaluating those safety standards, that you're not blocking traffic that's trying to come in, and you're building a full privacy fence all the way to your front lot line.
Right.
You can't see kids, you can't see traffic, you can't see anything, and that was the intent of the R1. But we have the same houses in R2 and our mobile home districts.
At least have it sloped, like there's a house on Center and Cross that has a house or a fence that comes out, but once it gets to the house, it starts going down, tapers down, and you can see down the road for oncoming traffic. There's no hazard that way.
And there's, remedies. It's not saying you can't do it. It just says you have to come before the planning commission to make sure that, hey, the safety concerns are met and satisfied.
Yeah.
And it's appropriate for that area. And ultimately, it's the governing body that determines whether that is a yay or a nay.
Right.
But that's food for thought. My opinion would be, if we're going to apply rules for a house in one zone, that same rules should apply in every other zone. Accessory building setbacks, we have those requirements for R4 and R5, but those zones do not exist in the city of Mayflower. We don't have accessory use setbacks for storage buildings and stuff like that in our mobile home districts. And I think originally our planning document had that in there, but that was when it was in R4 or R5, whatever the case may be. But right now, there are no setback requirements for sheds or anything like carports or anything like that on our mobile home districts.
I wonder when this was created. I think there was kind of a rule of no mobile homes in town, in the city.
They got repeated.
So that's probably why there's a lot of gaps there, because the assumption was we won't have new mobile homes within the city. Now we do, so.
Very well could be.
Yep.
I just know that R4, that R5, it doesn't exist anywhere but right here. And so there is actually no zone use going on.
When the zoning originated, there was mobile home areas.
Yeah.
It wasn't eliminated, so there was an MH area. There always has been,
So it's just kind of a gap.
yes.
Gotcha.
I think places just scans over the years.
Yeah.
Like you said, snowballs. Add
Yeah.
this to SCAD and add this to SCAD without repealing or changing anything prior, and so you end up with the ambiguity that.
Yeah.
Well, we have so many references in different chapters and different parts of the code, and I can see where one that might have been revised and they overlooked the subsequent references downstream of the code.
Mhm.
And that's where we're at. Solutions, I'm just one man, I'm coming here tonight with my solution to fix this, to bring this forward. This will be ordinance 2508 if enabled and enacted. So the first part of this would amend the site plan and conditional use review requirement in our existing city code. So we would delete the obsolete references for residential 4 and residential 5. And we would apply that to manufactured home park districts, which is R3. We don't have any right now. It's on there just in case that does happen. And then adding a new section, new language, that any commercial use with any Heart of Mayflower overlay zoning district shall come before the planning commission. So any commercial project, regardless of conflicting base zoning, if it's an R1 with a commercial overlay, you still have to come to the planning commission with your site plan and go through that approval process. So we're not amending any of the regulatory requirements, design standards, or anything. We're just trying to make sure that a commercial project
Come before somebody.
comes before a governing body or a regulatory.
Just to clarify.
So the second piece to this would amend the actual Heart of Mayflower zoning documents. So I would propose that we eliminate the very specific reference to chapter 9, which only deals with streets and sidewalks. And that anytime we have design standards that conflict with city code, the Heart of Mayflower standards win the day.
Are they the more rigorous standards by far overall across the board? But
Even for streets and sidewalks?
Well, so that would still be included.
Well, I know, but like the streets and sidewalks.
Yeah, so it depends on the zone and the land use, what you get to do. There's a whole matrix in this overlay code. So I can't answer your question specifically, but yes, there are more stringent requirements. And then I propose to add another section to this, which would be section E, redressing concurrent zoning. And basically all this is going to do, if there is a conflict in that zoning, this ensures that the Heart of Mayflower zoning ordinance shall prevail and override that base zoning. The land use, the requirements, and the development standards fall on the Heart of Mayflower, not the original city-based zoning.
which I feel like was probably the intent.
100% was the
Part of
intent.
Mayflower was adopted, it just wasn't clarified.
Yeah, this is adding a level of specificity to the original document to address the intent or the desire that
Well-
it was just missing before.
And what it also does is clarify, you can only use the Heart of Mayflower, and you can't look at anything else.
Yeah,
Right.
as a way to get around.
You're eliminating everything below it.
That's
Yeah.
the only layer. So even the subdivision overlay district, that won't apply. Heart of Mayflower is the only guided document for development. That's it.
Until the UDO is adopted.
Adopted and replaces it.
That's
Right.
right.
Yep. Yeah, this actually adds a level of requirements to commercial ventures that was intended, but just with the letter of our ordinance was just the letter of the law, it wasn't there, and it opened up a loophole.
Sure. So section 3, this would go back to the accessory buildings. And we're delete the obsolete language for R4 and R5. And just replace it with R3 and mobile home districts to ensure that every residential use has to follow the same setback requirements that every other residential use has to have. We applied it to zones that don't exist. And just trying to correct that and bring it forward to our mobile home districts as well.
This is anything like a storage building, a portable
Yes.
building. that
Any
sort of thing.
accessory building.
Outbuildings, yeah.
Just ensure they're not putting it right on the real
On the
property line or
property
in our
line.
corner with no offsets.
Chris, 10 feet is more strict than, excuse me, 7 feet, I guess, in the side yard. Oh, rear yard, 10 feet.
Side yard 7.5.
That's it's more strict than Conway.
It's a healthy offset, but with the UDO, we have the opportunity to streamline all this and bring public comment in. Again, this is a Band-Aid, this is not a fix for everything that we've got, this is just to answer the immediate need that we have right now before us and last week. So the second part of that is I skipped several parts of chapter 1408, but it gets down into the fence requirement, application to build a fence in front of the front building line of the front yard in an R1 district shall be petitioned to the planning commission. So I was proposing we strike the R1, and then if you're in a residential zone, you need to come before the planning commission to discuss the front yard fence.
Now, let me get clarification on something. Somebody was asking me this the other day. If they're wanting to put up a fence that separates their property from the adjacent property, but it's only as a barrier or a barrier, let's say. And like somebody I think had mentioned, they recognize when you get to a certain point, that fence is going to be go down at a diagonal and maintain like 2 foot or whatever to a few more
It
feet.
tapers off.
So and it doesn't go all the way to the property line, to the street, so that there's no safety issue in terms of your neighbor backing out, can't see the direction or yourself or guests at that.
That's the code as it's written right now in R1 will not allow you to do that. That's the way the law is written right now. Because that is a courtesy. They're tapering that off as a courtesy, being good neighbors, but there's no requirement that they do that. So
But
that's where the planning commission comes in with that, hey, well, let's look at, you want to do a front yard fence or you want to do a barrier all the way to your front lot line. We can do that, but we're going to taper it off, taking into account traffic and all this stuff.
Oh, yeah.
It would require them now to,
You
Going
still have to go
forward.
before the
Yes.
planning commission. Okay,
Correct.
So
that's what-
there's nothing to preclude that from happening, but it would have to be presented and approved. There's no design criteria that is in the ordinance, period.
Well, what this person wanted to do is put a 6-foot privacy fence, picket fence, that type of thing.
I've done that before, and I had to get approval to do so.
Okay.
I'm not opposed to getting approval, it's got any question. Now, I'm not getting into those weeds, but I live in a corner lot. I was thinking about coming out past my house on one side, but if you're not to the street, that's not a front yard fence.
It's for a
It's not
barrier.
on the front of my house.
Right. Again,
That gets weird in a corner lot, I guess.
Oh,
the current
absolutely.
code.
A lot of things with the corner lot doesn't apply to
Mhm.
on the street, just a regular street.
because
So-
we're looking at fences for a safety issue, and there's nothing but field or woods beyond that fence. It's not a safety issue. So it's like, you don't have to see oncoming traffic.
That I could bring a proposal.
Well, that's what I'm
Planning
saying.
commission, I'm not worried about
Yeah.
that. It's gotta be thinking, that's weird.
And again, this is
What's a
current
front yard
code.
fence?
Yeah.
We're gonna get questions on these fences.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Without
This
Good
current
code.
code, so that we're not changing the language or the criteria, we're just
And
changing.
who it applies to?
And if we're gonna do it for one house, we probably should look at doing it for every house, because the same concerns exist regardless.
No, I agree.
Yeah.
Good point, though.
So while I have it, just a few other issues to consider before I close. Heart of Mayflower does allow R1SB in the commercial overlay districts. It is not entirely a commercial overlay document. So the city has a very healthy appetite for wide lots. With the Heart of Mayflower, and as it's applied on Interstate Drive in our Creekside zone, you can build a single-family site-built home in that area. But Heart of Mayflower says you can only have a 40-foot wide lot maximum, which runs contrary to our current codes.
60-foot minimum.
60 foot.
But if we approve what we've done, then that document will win the day, and the 40-foot maximum lots become the rule of law in those two zones.
So someone could start building on a 40-foot lot and we couldn't stop them.
No, the 40-foot maximum says you can't build a 60-foot lot.
Yeah, you can build a 20-foot
It's not
lot,
that you can build a 40,
Yep.
but you can't build a 60-foot
or
lot.
you can,
It's Interstate Drive and the Creekside zone.
or you can build a 20-foot and put a tiny home on it.
No minimum there.
Right, maximum of 40, which is,
So again, we've got continued conflict with our existing rules and regulations in two different documents.
This really highlights.
And these are just pressing, just surface examples. I could dig all day long on this stuff. But,
But I've got homes over there.
yes, sir.
My home total length is about 90 foot long.
Wow.
With the garage.
You're not in compliance, right?
Well, I
we'll be,
I'm sure.
we'll be over tomorrow to tear your house down.
I'm doing the foot.
And my dad's house next door, now, these houses.
Yeah,
This will be for new construction going forward, that, you know, these rules and regulations would apply to. Everything we're talking about right now tonight would be, you know, everything that's here right now is existing use, so we're not trying to tighten the screws on anything that's already here.
Yeah.
so are you thinking of excluding that and sticking with the 60-foot?
So we can amend, we can propose an ordinance to amend and have that, you know,
60
mirror.
minimum.
I'm just, I'm trying to understand what our predecessors had in mind, and Barbara may be able, it's not a shot, Barbara may be able to help with this. What they had in mind when they put that 40-foot maximum rule
They
in,
wanted a small
They were looking, so there's.
like a townhouse style.
Right. They're
Or
looking
tiny
for
home.
density and walkability in those two corridors. So the theory was denser lots, smaller blocks, and allowing for more development in that area with smaller lots. But in the heart of Mayflower, they kind of go in by each zone, and they kind of outline what the theory behind the zoning was. So if you want to deep dive into that, it's online, and you know, we have access to that and send it to you. But
Well, Metro Plan's got this whole walkability issue that we've been through several times. Here's the truth, though, we live between a freeway, a highway, and a railroad.
It's not a walking town. It's not a walking town. Yeah. Yeah.
You're gonna turn over to the planning commission to adjust this?
so this is food for thought. The ordinance that I provided tonight does not address this. But, because I didn't want to, the heart of Mayflower has been kind of a sticking point, so I wasn't going to propose amending that in any meaningful way as far as design criteria and standards. If the council or the planning commission want to do that, I'll draft something and we can run with it and we can do that. But that's not in the solution I provided.
In terms of this right here.
Yes, sir.
So that's just an interstate in Creekside.
Yes, sir.
Where's Creekside again? Just.
Next to the creek.
Yeah.
Just, is it a small zone, is that?
Yeah, it's not very big at all. And everywhere else, it's not permitted. So the NP and the mixed use and the highway zone, you can't have site built homes and you can't have townhomes. You can only have them where that P column is.
Will you please write up a proposal for the next planning commission? We will I definitely want to address that 40-foot maximum and get that addressed. And-
That would be moved to a minimum of, or maximum, a minimum of 60 foot,
Yes, sir.
like we have everywhere else.
Correct.
Should be the same as everywhere else in Mayflower.
Yep.
basically.
And right now, it's 60 foot minimum.
Yep. And with us doing this, part of Mayflower is going to trump everything. If
Well-
somebody would come in and say, well, you can't require me to do a
We've already
60.
been asked of this to go to 50 foot, 50 foot with subdivision. And we said no.
Right.
That was a straight R1 though, correct?
Correct. Yes.
And I'm not saying there aren't places in town where more of a townhouse style with a
Well-
lot line would be acceptable.
Right.
Well, let's,
The maximum is what bothers me.
let's face it, if somebody came in and they've got X number of acres and they want to build 0 lot lines or patio homes, that's an entirely different
With a
situation.
special use district.
That's right. So that you come in and go before the planning commission, and then that would be worked
Rezone
out.
as a special use
Exactly.
instead of a
Exactly.
residential zone.
Right.
I'm kind of the same way with the mobile homes. I know we're changing, and it's fine to do this, put these mobile homes there, but it's a one-man style. But it's my opinion that a mobile home park, as you say, is more like a commercially zoned thing anyway. Yes, people
Exactly.
live there, but it's owned by one person that's in.
Exactly.
It's a business.
Or either,
It meets more the criteria of a commercial than.
just like our RV park. Mobile home park, RV park, so on and so forth. but
Even
having said
apartments.
this, we can't vote on anything tonight, but is it a consensus that everybody says, go ahead and draw up an ordinance that change this to a 60-foot?
Sure.
As
I
opposed to
can produce
40.
that, and y'all can discuss it and debate it, and I can have it at the next meeting.
Now,
Is
the
everybody
other,
okay with that?
yes, the other part though, are we voting on the technical fixes?
We're not voting on anything, but are we reaching a consensus to move this forward to the council meeting as an ordinance?
I mean,
As
I'm
what,
fine with it, if you're just doing an aye vote. But as this was a called emergency meeting, could we
Yeah, I thought we could vote.
forward and vote with emergency?
Well, that's true.
We got a quorum.
That's true, that is.
We have a quorum. It's just,
I've already had one party walk away because I could not give him definitive, land use requirements and regulations. And I've got two others that, kinda hoping we can come to a conclusion tonight, so.
We can vote. Let's vote.
I apologize. I was thinking this was our council workshop. This is a special emergency called meeting by me, so we can vote on that if we've got a quorum.
yes, sir.
If everybody's in agreement from the council that's representing
And
it.
I'm gonna be fair.
So
Read through,
that,
I can read through all the special ordinance procedures if, I said read through, I'm kind of on by heart, but I don't think there's anything wrong here. Part of me does question, though, does Dustin need to put eyes on this before we vote it in as ordinance?
we've talked with Dustin on most of this. He regrets that he couldn't be here
Oh,
tonight.
sure, oh,
Yeah.
we knew he wasn't gonna make the workshop.
That's right, that's right. I didn't know he was gonna be in Alaska though, and be on a ship. It was gonna be limited in terms of, could call in. So I apologize for
There's
that.
something really technical, I would agree with you, but I think that's pretty straightforward.
No, I agree, and that's, I'm just devil's advocate here, and they're both like, whoa, why did I do that for you? You can't do that, but I think it's fine.
Yes, I do.
I'm no lawyer, though.
Yeah.
I'm not either, so I welcome all the eyes on it that I can get on it.
Kyle, what was your comment?
I was just gonna say, I would be in agreement on voting on this tonight. I think it sets what our intent is to do. Obviously, if Dustin finds something wrong with it, we can amend it.
Right.
But, I think that it would be prudent to do it tonight.
What would be the ordinance number? 2025-08? Okay, so let me see if I can do this from memories.
You want me to, you want me
Let me
to?
try.
Barbara's ready.
I do. I got a few more, but we can do this.
Go ahead.
All right.
I
So
changed my mind.
since I've got everybody here thinking about planning and zoning, there are some things before us that we do need to consider as a council and a commission that the state of Arkansas has passed. Act 591, it concerns construction and development, that third-party contractors can come in and start doing our site plans and our actual building inspections. The city can actually be cut out of that process, and we just have a very top-level review. We need to look at amending our rules and regulations to account for this, and also our liabilities. Act 313, regulations to prohibit restrictions on accessory dwelling units. So we've had several acts that have passed that kind of circumvent the local unit of government's authority to regulate some things in planning and zoning this year.
Explain that a little bit more, like we were talking about, where, when we say dwelling,
Tiny
what that
homes.
really, we're talking.
Sure,
about.
so you're like mother-in-law apartments or mother-in-law cottages, secondary properties, secondary dwelling units that are on a primary lot, so a house and another.
Before, it was not allowed from our zoning process.
Like the
Now the
tiny
state
homes.
has stepped in and said, they're taking the city out of it. That if you want to build another cottage or
Tiny
a
home.
whatever tiny home in
You
your.
still have to meet setback requirements and other
Setbacks.
regulatory requirements the city has, but we can't just blanket prohibit that stuff going forward.
I like that.
I mean, it is what it is.
All about individual freedom. You
Exactly.
buy a piece of land and you're playing by the rules,
Well,
I'll let you do, brother.
what I look at, that's another water main.
So, we no longer have an extraterritorial zone. The ETJ was abolished by the state of Arkansas for all
So is
cities.
that model planning
Yes,
zone?
that's right. We can no longer exercise any influence.
I actually like
Whether it
that.
be 1 mile, whether it be 5
We don't have
miles,
to worry about
whatever. Only thing we have jurisdiction in now
City limits.
is within the city limits.
Prior, we could have some influence over commercial development, and subdivision development, can't do that.
I actually kind of like that. We'd stop at our city limits, and that's what we're responsible for.
Yes, but here's the thing, you better keep your commercial building requirements
hmm
simple. Otherwise, people are gonna move 100 feet outside your city, and you're not gonna get the tax money.
Right.
Till-
And that's one of the,
Yes.
yeah, and that's
Dirty A word.
But that very point is one reason why we're doing the UDO is to simplify so that businesses can say, oh, they're using the UDO. I know exactly what I'm going to have to do. I know what it's going to cost me. I know what the regulations. It's going to be an easy build.
And so that's a two-edged sword. If we can simplify it, that's going to draw, we're hoping it's going to draw people here too also.
You also wanna do right by your city and.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we had another Act 595 that amends municipal planning and requires us to set forth an administrative procedure for somebody to petition the zoning designation of a property in very certain circumstances, that they basically can compel the city in very certain circumstances to rezone a property, whether or not the city agrees to it or not.
That they can put a stop to that.
No,
zone.
they can compel the zoning change. If it's R1 and they want a commercial, if they meet these criteria, they can force the city to zone that commercial.
Even though in our process right now, you have to consider all the feedback of people
Yes, so
300
that's
feet
all
around.
included. If you're the owner of the site, there's several other criteria in there.
It doesn't make any difference what your neighbor said long.
It's like reverse eminent domain, where the property owner tells the city what they're going to do with it.
And again, it's a very long act, so I'm not privy to the details. I have not even gone through the entire work of the last legislative session, so there's still probably a dozen things I haven't even seen yet. But again, and the last one I saw, as I was just kind of glancing through this, they passed a law that would disallow us from placing any regulatory authority on county property in the city limits.
Mhm.
Say that again?
So prohibit a municipality from enforcing building and zoning regulations on county property.
Within city limits.
Does the
property.
county own any property within our city limits?
Not that I'm aware of.
What about the truck stops up there? Is that state property or is that city?
That's a,
That's us.
School property, what is that state property or is that,
Not school district.
that's just school district? Okay.
and again, these are just random things that I saw as I was going through, because I knew I'd have at least we'd all have a one-track mind tonight too. But these are all things that are going to impact our city as we move forward, and things that we probably need to read through at some point and adjust our rules and regulations accordingly. The last piece I got, I know we just annexed, we zoned that, our annexed area agricultural one, I think the last city council meeting. Unintended consequence of that is I can no longer enforce environmental code. Because the grass cut provision explicitly says grass height is only applicable in residential and commercial zones. And we've zoned all of those neighborhoods agricultural. So I've had code complaints that I can't do anything about because it's agricultural and it's basically hands-on. So we've got several existing neighborhood streets that I don't think there's any intention or any way that those will develop into commercial corridors. I would ask the council and planning commission to consider go ahead and rezoning those to R1 to fit the use that's already there. So that the rest of the city codes and regulations would apply to those properties equally as everybody else.
And I don't know if this would be any better or not, would it be better to rezone it R1 or to add some sort of grass cutting requirement in a agricultural area where
So
a single family
grass
dwelling?
cut was just one example.
Okay.
There's several
There's
other
others.
conditions that apply. So like all of our setbacks and accessory uses, all that's based on residential. and
Resident.
commercial. It's not,
Gotcha.
so
Really needs
they're
to be,
pretty much out there unregulated right now.
so it really just needs to
Like
be.
you gotta go through that green block track by track though. that northwest corner there behind the church, they cut that as a hay field. If you set a grass cutting regulation on that, they
Yeah.
can cut that for,
And I'm-
it is agriculture.
Yeah.
And I'm not advocating taking all the way at the R1 by any stretch.
No, that's what, it's almost gotta be partial.
Yeah.
Yes, Lucky Drive, Billy Drive, for sure, Catch Road, Chad, y'all gonna be in, or, you know what I mean, but the greenhouses, I mean, it's not really all one, that's commercial.
So that would be the A2. We have a commercial
Yes,
agricultural
yes.
operation, and that would be the applicable zoning for that. But as you look even further to the right, you see that the bypass is still, the base zoning is R1, and the intent is that develop commercially.
I'm thinking, which they do a good job of, but Pennant Prop right there, that's commercial.
Yes.
With their, it's not residential.
So
Across from the cemetery, and that's all in that,
it's all in the block.
block there. So it's gotta be taken parcel by parcel, not a blanket, oh, let's make these R1.
Yeah.
Let's make Billy Drive and Lucky Drive R1, let's make it Elm and Snow Circle R1
Makes sense.
where it makes sense.
Yeah, I think those
Leave some
broad,
agriculture, leave some,
yeah,
it's getting
those,
the weeds, but I think weeds are applicable here, it's not a.
the broad stroke is what's got us into this issue to begin with, and where we just have big blankets overlaying each other. So yeah, I think you're absolutely right. We need to be
So how are we going to
intentional.
do that?
Well, it will just have to go through the rezoning process. And,
Mhm.
you know, ultimately, the city council would have to do the final approval of that. And we could get with Metro Plan to, if we have any thoughts on what corridors or what, you know, streets that should be included in that, that we can actually get some maps produced and make sure that everybody's on the same page.
We're 6 months out on adopting EO. Is this pertinent enough to go through all that
Well,
now, or do we just wait and zone it whenever we zone the rest of the city with the EO?
So I've had some very pressing concerns from people that are developing property in some of these streets, and they're concerned that they're not gonna be able to sell their property and recover their investment because of some conditions of neighboring properties.
So it is a pressing concern now that acting soon would
It is to
address
those
the problem.
individuals that have that property out there.
And again, you know, this is nothing that I'm self-initiating. All of these are problems that I'm trying to rectify one way or another.
Well, we give that a little thought, and
Sure.
we go back to the very beginning
Sure.
and walk through this to see what we want to approve tonight that we've already discussed.
Well, I think this proposed ordinance 2025-08 addresses everything.
Well, that's what I want to make
The
sure.
world that's on fire.
Yes.
If you will.
Fire drill.
All right, so this is kind of what we were initially let off with, and it's the conflict between the city zoning and the overlay districts.
So going back to what Zach just said, with that, what he was going to make a motion to go forward and vote on tonight, is that going to, how far will that carry us down into your presentation?
So basically with what the ordinance is proposing, it's going to allow anything that falls under Heart of Mayflower, it will be governed by the Heart of Mayflower.
Part of Mayflower.
And that's
This
the goal.
continues everything below it.
There's no question about the underlying zoning for the suburban overlay district.
Which again, feels to me like it's a clarification of the original intent.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's only where where they overlap.
Correct. Or there's a conflict. So we have some property that, yeah, obviously the base underlying zoning is commercial. And that's applicable and consistent with the overlay. But we have this residential part of it that's starting to crop up. And I've had 3 separate instances last week in 3 different parts of the city. Same problem. So it is present and it's urgent, and people want to make very large financial decisions based on our rules and regulations, and I can't clearly tell them one way or the other.
Zach,
We'll have room for discussion in this, but I move that we suspend the rules, waive the second, and third reading of ordinance 2025-08, read the ordinance by title only, and vote on ordinance 2025-08 after its initial reading.
Second.
that was pretty good. Yes. Get all that?
Yes.
Okay.
Zach did the thing. That's
With that,
Second.
let's have roll call vote.
Well, we need to read it by title.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Okay,
Okay.
Well, that was a motion for the rules.
right. Mhm.
So now we have to second it, so we got to vote on the rule suspension.
Okay.
So is this all
Rule.
Are we voice voting or do we
we
need?
can on suspending the rules?
Okay, so all in favor with the motion that Zach had put on the table, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed by saying? Thank you. Okay, now,
Actually, while I'm looking at at the procedure here, it does say call the roll. Is that a procedural thing?
We've done it both ways. We'll just call.
I'm gonna ask because I did pull it up.
We,
the sheet.
we
I
have
am
done
looking
it,
at
but we have done it both ways.
if you go through the call of roll.
It does, it takes 2 extra seconds in its code.
It takes care of everything.
Okay. Zach Jeffrey,
Yes.
Jack Paul,
Yes.
Kyle Marks,
Yes.
James Snyder,
Yes.
Larry Hill.
Yes. Now, read the ordinance.
Okay,
Ordinance
Barbara, please.
Ordinance 2025-08, an ordinance of the City of Mayflower, Arkansas, amending Chapter 14 of the Municipal Code regarding zoning requirements, declaring an emergency, and for other purposes.
So I move that we adopt ordinance 2025-08.
Thank you. Discussion? No discussion? Again, go ahead and just call roll vote, please.
Zach Jeffrey,
Yes.
Jack Paul,
Yes.
Kyle Marks,
Yes.
James Snyder,
Yes.
Larry Hill.
Thank you. All opposed by saying? Thank you.
Voice votes.
Yeah. Everyone
And
vote.
then, I move that we adopt an emergency clause on ordinance 2025-08.
We have a motion, we have a second. Now, do we go into just a roll vote?
We'll just call the roll, that way we'll have it all.
That's right, that's right.
Zach,
This is the final vote, right? Okay.
Zach Jeffrey,
Yes.
Jack Paul,
Yes.
Kyle Marks, James Snyder,
Yes.
Larry Hill.
Right, thank you.
Very good, Zach.
You did good, Zach. Okay. So with this, how do we feel about it now? What's the next step?
So, the next step would be to, if y'all want, I can bring forth another ordinance regarding the rezoning of the annexed area and touching on amending the Heart of Mayflower regarding the 40-foot lots.
So I was gonna say, I wanna make sure.
I think that would be something to be proposed at,
Yep.
if not the workshop Thursday night, if we have 10 minutes to, because that's a short,
Right.
to prepare for this month's council meeting to actually vote on those ordinances.
Would,
I think we've got some time on those.
yes. Would you put that, as one of the agenda items?
I'll work on that ordinance tomorrow. I mean,
Will you have time?
I'll have it ready for the workshop on Thursday.
Maybe not the zoning, because that's gonna take some time.
I'll have to get Metro done on all of that.
Right. Okay. So with that, approved ordinance, 2025-08, you just went through that process. And you're going to work up something that's going to go back to the 60, go from 40 foot to 60 foot minimum in terms of that. And then the other zoning issues that we have, that's going to be delayed until we get Metro Plan involved, and then we start looking at that piece by piece.
Yeah.
Am I correct in that?
There's a lot of different land uses over there.
Yes.
And we want to keep some of that kind of wide open for anything that may come our way. So we only want to very narrowly apply that all at once.
To the residential zone.
And that's it.
Is that satisfactory with the council?
I have one question on that. Can we not name those streets and say that these streets will comply with the zoning with grass? Can we not just identify those streets for now, or we waiting through the whole?
I would feel better if we actually had legal descriptions and parcels broken out. We actually had to map that, identify that. Very well. It's gonna take a little time, but I'll get to this, with the result.
We just would give you what you need to do your job as soon as we possibly can.
I want to go with legal restrictions to keep it consistent with everything else we're trying to do tonight. Not take a shortcut, even though that would be a welcome shortcut.
Okay, having said that, what else?
As it sits right now, moving through and working on the UDO that we need to do
Yes.
there with a sense of purpose.
And we'll get together and try to get a
Yeah,
schedule out
workshop.
where we can have these subsequent meetings.
Yep.
To try to move through the UDO.
Other than that, that takes care of any urgent needs and been
Okay.
brought before me in the past couple of weeks.
Okay. Everyone, I really appreciate you coming and taking time. I know this is, this is so valuable, and I feel like we've got something accomplished, really that it's gonna better our community. And so thank every one of you that participated. Like we know Mark and Dustin couldn't be here tonight, but thank you so much.
Can I say something real quick?
Yes.
I just want to say that I think that this process, I mean, before you were elected mayor, having a code enforcement, we talked, and that was a big idea that, I mean, something important that you wanted to put into place. And I think starting with John and then now with Chris, we have seen that, finding things like this that will prevent unintended, a business coming in with a savvy lawyer and just start dropping concrete wherever they want. Chris finding these gaps, I think that shows that, I mean, it's just evidence that this process of having code enforcement is beneficial to the city, and anything that we pay Chris for salary is recouped in not having businesses just be able to come in and do whatever they want.
We're trying to lobby for a raise.
I have been complimentary of Chris in this meeting because in our
Done an outstanding job.
100%, and I just want to recognize the fact that he does,
I appreciate
and he does wear a lot of hats. I mean, the man puts out fires too.
Oh,
So I mean,
No doubt.
so I mean, he's
Don't
out there.
forget he carries a gun.
You have 100%, yeah.
Generally, yeah.
So I just wanted to point that out.
Thank you again. We really appreciate you.
Well, I appreciate y'all giving me your time,
Great,
especially
great.
on unscheduled meetings, so I'm glad we got it done.
Thank you. Anybody else have
Anything
anything?
prepared for Thursday yet, or close to it?
I do have kind of agenda, and I need to run it past the mayor tomorrow, and then we got several items on there.
Going in the town.
Oh, we're gonna have a timer. We may have 2 timers. 2 minutes, and so on, so.
Any timer?
Yes,
So we didn't make a motion to adjourn. So I make a motion to adjourn.
that's what I was gonna say. All right. Thank you again.
Yeah, but anybody can come, it's open. I can't be there.
Thank you so much for.
You're welcome, dear. Yeah.
Sorry that your other meeting.
Oh, well, that's okay.
Didn't work out.
It's all right, but I thought, I thought,